Thompson's there, Billy in. A goal, Chris Billy, Huddersfield Town. The most famous goal of Chris Billy's life.
Is this the moment for Lee Fowler? It is. Take your place in Division 2, Huddersfield Town.
Ruby and Steve Simonson's boots now. He's missed. Steve Simonson clears the frame of the goal and collapses in a heap of tears. Huddersfield Town are promoted.
Christopher Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance!
Right, okay, so we're now moving into the Andre Breitenreiter era, or period. I don't think it's long enough to be called an era. And joining me to discuss this is a man who looks like he's a bass player in a 1970s communist East German neo-punk band. It's Brady Frost. And the man who has more talent in his hands than Matthew Corbett. It's Tom Bradshaw. You okay, guys?
Hi, mate.
Yeah, good. Lovely introduction.
Yeah, it makes me sad that we're going to be one of the last ones to introduce you both. But let's kick things off.
Now because it happened.
I know. Let's kick things off. It's the day after Valentine's Day, otherwise known as Singles Awareness Day. And Town decided to show no respect to that celebratory day by getting themselves a new partner by the name of Andre Breitenreiter. So in he came, a very good pedigree, not quite as good as Triple H's. And I think it's fair to say many Town fans were ready to fall in love all over again, weren't they, with a German manager and his pronunciations and his post-match, pre-match, where he got on Saturday, the things like that. Is such a great booming voice, and everyone took to him immediately. And the first game at Watford was one where it looked like a match made in heaven, Tom. Town played reasonably well first half, went 1-0 down, and then did the unthinkable and actually came from behind to win a game of football, which was a miracle in itself. And Breitenreiter changing the game with his subs of Danny Ward and Tom Edwards, who assisted one, and it looked great, didn't it, at that point?
It did, didn't it? And it was, it felt like a classic Watford away day, and it was clawing them into the danger zone as well, wasn't it? It was one of those where we weren't that far off them, and a win almost felt like, oh yeah, let's get some more teams involved. And it just felt all positive, didn't it? It felt like brilliant. We're going to have a new manager bounce for once as well. And yeah, obviously, we know what happened next. But at that moment in time, it was a very positive move. It felt like the club had done something really kind of proactive for once, and brought in someone with a great pedigree and who we thought was going to keep us up and stay on for next season and build on a team that we know that needs some work, and hopefully he was going to get the backing as well.
I mean, Brady, the win against Watford, and there's a great picture, isn't there, of Breitenreiter celebrating, with the fist and the big smile, and it looked sort of, this is going to be great, this, and I think everybody kind of had that feeling, didn't they? And then the Leeds game came, and a local derby. Leeds had won 9 games in a row. They were looking to make it 10, and at that time they were the form team in the league, and it might be Red Bull Leeds or whatever they're going to be called now, but they were superb at the time, weren't they? And Town met them head on and really gave them a fight. And up until Jonathan Hogg getting sent off, it looked like Town could actually win the game after Mikael Helik puts us 1-0 up. And Town really looked untroubled, didn't they? And it was that fight which had kind of come in during the John Worthington period that Town hadn't really showed really all season up until that point. And this, unfortunately, is probably the high point, isn't it, of the Breitenreiter tenure, where Jonathan Hogg gets sent off, but everybody rallies around. Matos comes off the bench, and he's superb, doesn't he, in the amount of ground he covers. Kasumu was excellent that day as well, moving in one direction. And we are, as fans, unwittingly knowing that we're being set up for one hell of a fall.
Yeah, it's such a shame about that Leeds game, because I really did feel like this could be the turning point. Like you say, obviously to get the win at Watford in the manner that we did, but then the performance we put in, I think that's kind of what we were crying out for at the time. And I just think even the vibe you touched on Hogg there, I'm convinced we could have won that game if we had 11 men, and I just think even the feeling in the stadium, I was at the game and people were clapping, really encouraging the team and kind of willing them on, even when like you say, you're playing the second half with 10, and it just I just, yeah, it's such a shame. I almost want. I'm not sure if it would have been the result if we were to get a win that kept us up, but I just remember leaving that game and thinking like, we've seen something here. 2 games, 4 points. We've got something to work with here, and unfortunately, it wasn't the case. But yeah, it's a shame really, because I was kind of, this season I was always convinced they would stay up, and whereas I didn't think that the previous season when they actually did. So yeah, it was a really difficult one, like you said, probably the high point of his reign.
Yeah, and then unfortunately we now have to talk about the bits where it comes to part, or falls apart, I should say. And it sort of went to shit, to for use of a better phrase there. The Cardiff game came, and Cardiff kind of set up differently. Cardiff just, because we were very sort of front-footed, weren't we? It kind of carried on the John Worthington ethos of changing us to a front-footed team and attacking from the front, and trying to get under the skin of the opposition and attack, or win the ball high up. And Cardiff just kind of sat off us and let us have the ball, and that killed us, because we are so bad at playing football. It sounds really bad, doesn't it? The Huddersfield Town just can't play football. But it's true. If you let us have the ball, we've got no idea what to do with it or how to break teams down. And Cardiff just sat off, frustrated us, and then beat us 1-0. And that kind of set a template for anyone else to show, this is how you beat these lot. You just let them have the ball. And then West Brom, and who do you not want? Tactically, who do you not want to come up against in terms of an out of possession coach? Carlos Corberán, who's a phenomenally good out of possession coach, who, he's so, he's tactically so good at squeezing the space and denying you, or denying your team any attacking opportunities. And we may have scored in that game, but the second half was a real sort of hammer blow, Tom, wasn't it? Whereby I think it was live on TV as well, wasn't it? And we went 1-0 up. Bergzorg gets a little bit of luck from the West Brom goalkeeper. We had not had much luck at all this season, but we got a little slice there. And then West Brom just murdered us second half, but not particularly by being very good, but just by being very Carlos, didn't they, in terms of organised, structured, and playing in the right areas and everything. And I remember when Carlos was at Huddersfield, and the thing that you always thought was, come away and you'd won 3-0, and you were like, have we only had 3 shots today? And
Yeah.
it was kind of like, I can't really remember much from that game apart from those 3 shots, and we scored 3 goals, and everything West Brom seemed to hit went into the net. And that long range strike kind of summed it up really, where he's never going to score a goal like that again in his career. And at that point, that was the first, if it's almost like cutting a string, isn't it? And that was like the first, string sort of twanging at that point. And that was a real sort of letdown, wasn't it, Tom?
It was, wasn't it? I think that these 2 games, Matt, were a real kind of indication or moment of realization that the players just didn't have the quality. That Cardiff game, I remember we had chances and it was embarrassing, some of the finishing, and then when we were getting into really good positions, the decision making of that final pass. And like you said, it was like Cardiff's game plan was just almost like, yeah, these lot are crap with the ball, let them have it, and because they're not going to do anything. And the West Brom one as well, like, yeah, the stats were, they were pretty even, and at point, was it when we were 2-1 down, Bergzorg had a really good
yeah.
one, and it's fine moments, fine margins, fine moments like that I think have definitely defined the running of this season. I think there's lots of moments in these last kind of eight or 9 games that you think, oh, if we'd have just done this at this point, then you never know, it might have changed. And it was just really disappointing, those 2 games after the Watford and Leeds game, because you thought something was going to happen.
For me, Brady, the sort of turning point came at Rotherham, really, and this is the first time we've kind of seen Andre Breitenreiter under fire from Huddersfield fans, and it's kind of gone from this instant, I wouldn't quite say love affair, but an instant attraction, if you like. I feel like we're going into Sharon Stone territory here, but it's gone from this sort of instant attraction to a certain skepticism because of the Rotherham And that really was a must-win game. And Rotherham had lost 9 in a row. The previous 2 games had lost them both 5-0. There was no better team to play in the history of the championship. It's like almost like Leeds was like there was no worse team to play in the history of the championship when we met Leeds. There was no better team to play in the history of the championship than Rotherham at this point. And we went there and did nothing. And it really grated on everybody. Andre Breitenreiter afterwards was sort of very adamant that it was a good point because we had 10 men. And I think you can accept that in normal circumstances, but because of the previous week and the defeats, Town really needed to win this game. And as it's panned out at the end of the season, this is a game where our future has pivoted, if you like, and not going for it. And I understand with 10 men, and we're not a very good attacking team as it is. Losing Sorba Thomas, who's your only sort of attacking outlet to create anything as well. But Brady, I'll cast right at the deep dive podcast. We had a couple of people on who were singing the praises of Breitenreiter from the rooftops, and I think everybody liked the voice of Toby, didn't it? One of the fan of what was he fan of again? I can't remember the team.
Hanover, I think. Yeah,
Hanover. They so everybody loved that, and then there was one dissenting voice from Mark Meadows, an English guy who does the Bundesliga, and he pretty much just went, "Nah, he's crap, this guy." He was quite blunt with it, and all of a sudden those words started haunting you a little bit about from Mark Meadows, and this is where everybody sort of saw the first negative really, or the first major negative of the Breitenreiter reign, and it was that Rotherham game. And a draw away from home in the championship is never a bad thing in isolation, but in context, it was a terrible result, Brady, really, wasn't it? And performance.
It's easy to say with hindsight, but if you look at like the Premier League, I think there's been a lot of jokes about the Sheffield United voucher. No matter what happens, you're playing Sheffield United, you're probably going to win that game. It felt like this. I remember previewing the games. Even though we had a big defeat to West Brom, it was a bit deflating, that result. But you think, right, well, this is the game. This is the game they need to win. This is the game they should win. Like you say, you talked about Rotherham's record going into this. It was just really disappointing. Even with 10 men, I think just not going for it. I do see the argument. Well, because I think that was posed at the time when everyone was quite rightly irritated. Well, can you imagine if they lost that game? But I think we'd seen an incredible escape the season before, and I think it was kind of riding on this game. And for me, this game is the season. I think we all, as bleak as it sounds, I think not getting a win to a team that was terrible in the division away from home. You can talk about Sorba's dismissal, but it wasn't even just that. Rotherham had the better chances from what I've seen to remember. I think they hit the post twice, and it was just very uninspiring. And this is the result for me. It's just because it's not only you want to grasp onto something and have some belief that they can do it again, they can do the Great Escape, but all the evidence we'd seen before that was like, and this is the game. And if we said it at the time, I remember a lot of fans saying it afterwards. If you can't beat Rotherham, you don't deserve to stay up. And it's simple as that for me. And we can talk about is that Breitenreiter's fault? I think he did some strange stuff tactically, but yeah, I think this is the result that, for me, given the run that he had, this is the one where I just think, yeah, this kind of sealed our fate, really. Looking back on it.
Yeah, it was a disappointing time, and unfortunately, we had the international break to sort of stew on as well afterwards, which doesn't help things, doesn't it? When you don't have another game immediately to try and right the wrongs, so to speak. And then when we came back, we had Coventry. Coventry were in form. They obviously had the cup run, which was good, and they were pushing towards the top 6. Some of their summer signings, like Hadji Wright, etc., had really sort of started to find form. Ellis Sims as well, and Ellis Sims scores a great goal in this game, doesn't he? And we lose 3-1, and the next game really is another where you're going away and you're thinking, right, we need to win this one now, and all of a sudden these must-win games, or it kind of goes from we could do with winning this to we could really do with winning this, from now as the games go by, and it was the Stoke game, and we started off well again, didn't we? And the goal, Bojan Radulovic starts up front and scores, a really good goal, and then it's the same mental frailties, isn't it? That we'd hoped had gone and were there during the Darren Moore period that we thought we'd seen the last of, with John Worthington and the start of the Breitenreiter um, period. We thought we'd sort of kicked that a little bit, but then old habits sort of come back in, and you do get that, don't you, with managerial changes? You do get that sort of honeymoon period, and then all of a sudden everybody sort of reverts to type, so to speak. And it was that sort of second half was disappointing, and Stoke equalised and then could have won the game really, and there's that, and then we could have won the game. This is where I think people's patience with Delano Bergzorg really fractured at this point, where he can square Reece Healy. I think it's Reece Healy, isn't it, at the far post, and he shoots from a stupid angle after Sorba plays him through brilliantly, by the way. Um, and that again, it feels like another pivot game whereby you kind of go in the right direction. So, and then now you sort of pivot on a downward trend. And the Rotherham and Stoke games, despite drawing two away from home, really sort of put us on that negative spin. And it was again just more sort of disappointment, really, Tom. There, but this is really where you start to see not the wheels come off, so to speak, in any sort of serious way, but this is where you start to see the mental shape of the squad, and that in terms of personality, that maybe Huddersfield Town don't have the personality to stay in the division this time.
Yeah, I don't think. I think the players have maybe lost belief in themselves. I think one thing that amazes me in this whole spell, so from Watford to that Stoke game, Town are hitting double figure shots on target, shots, not shots on target, but shots on goal in all those games. And you look at the games before that where sometimes we weren't even reaching like 6 or 7. And I think that's what was really frustrating slash told us a lot about we didn't have that quality up front to finish the chances that we were creating. And the again we're going back to decision making in that Stoke game was just ridiculous, really, when you get into those really good positions and you're taking a shot from basically the goal line, and it's just things like that. And I remember even watching that Coventry game and thinking, well, like you you take out their 3 goals. Town actually haven't played that bad today. They've created
Well, like that, Tom.
chances. It's like, but I think one thing that frustrated me in that there was some games defensively that disappointed me, because I thought at the start of the season I thought we might not have the kind of ability up front, but I was very confident in the defensive setup we had, and that's my biggest disappointment, especially in those games that we just couldn't kind of nick that 1-0 win, because we were scoring the goals, getting the chances, and it's one of those like, could we have just been a bit more defensively resolute?
I mean, at this point as well, the injuries start to pile up a little bit as well, don't they? And that,
Yeah,
that didn't help. You're missing Radulovic scores the goal here, but he's had a spell out injured, and then he struggles again. Balker
yeah,
came with some fanfare, if you like. You talk about defensive issues, Tom, and Balker came with high praise, didn't he? And then he's barely played.
yeah.
Yuta
You was out,
Nakayama's
yeah. No, yeah,
injured by Jonathan Hogg, who
yeah,
himself was then out for the rest of the season. And we've, like I say, the luck. I mean, every relegated team will always point to bad luck at some stage. Well, but Huddersfield Town, honestly, have had the shittest luck going for years now. And no penalty at home for years, and things like that. Things are just everything sort of goes against us. And I think this is where a lot of people sort of looking forward to League One, where they're like, hopefully the luck will change. You know what I mean? Down there, whereby because there is an element of truth where you do make your own luck. Whereby the more shots you have, the more likely you're going to get a deflected goal. The more times you run at someone in the penalty box, the more chance you'll get of a penalty. It's that's the sort of thing. And Huddersfield Town don't do those things a lot, which is why they don't get the luck. And defensively, we do a lot of defending, and when you do a lot of defending, there's a lot of room for error, and it's just kind of what happens, isn't it? But I think what we'll do now is we'll go to our first award with you two guys. So, and it's going to be the Goal of the Season award.
Bergzorg brings it down and finds the back of the net. On his best stop for Huddersfield Town, Delano Bergzorg, he's on the score sheet. Roma with good strength, finds Harrod. Radoni! Jack in the box! And Radoni has surely won it for Huddersfield Town!
One by Radoni. It's Karoma. He's away from Limbakissa. The crowd urge him on. The ball goes in! There's Thomas, and there's the second for Huddersfield. It's those two again, but the roles are reversed. It's Karoma turning provided for Thomas this time round. And Huddersfield now clear in front between themselves and Rotherham in this Yorkshire derby.
Bergzorg here making the run. Darts in field, goes for goal, and scores quite brilliantly here. With an hour gone, it's Huddersfield Town who take the lead in the rain. And in truth, the goal has been coming. That key is finally beaten.
Great ball in. Harrods, 1-0. The perfect start for Huddersfield Town. They find themselves ahead after just 8 minutes. It's the first league goal of the season for the 21-year-old. And he took his opportunity very well indeed. Building up ahead of Steve Thomas with the cross. And Radoni with the finish. And it's gone from bad to worse for Queen's Park Rangers. The creator of the first goal is the scorer of the second. Surge forwards here. The effort fired towards goal. And Huddersfield ahead once again. Delano Bergzorg with his first goal since September. Huddersfield set to shock Sunderland here. Look at this for a first-time finish. Ross Anthony Patterson, who's furious with his defenders. Hold on to now.
Matos has won it back, and Karoma has been released. In behind here, Josh Karoma. Sheffield Wednesday are falling apart. 2 goals in quick succession. Josh Karoma back in the side and back among the goals. Another bold selection pays off for the interim manager.
Again, it's Henley. Henley's little slip ball through. Adulovic. It's still Adulovic! What a finish from Bojan Adulovic! What a way to get your first Huddersfield Town goal! Huddersfield had to find something in this second half. Relegated mathematically if they lose today, perhaps. And they must win, and they've got themselves level so soon after half-time. Swept home by Reece Healy.
Right, guys, I've just rolled in a nice video there of the best goals of the season, and I think the first thing that grabs me about this video is that this is probably one of the worst goal of the season videos I've ever seen in my life. There's literally none of these goals would feature in years gone by. I was watching like one from 2013-14, and some of the goals were outstanding. You know, Clayton and Norwood smashing them in from 30 odd yards. You know, you got Vaughan doing bicycle kicks and all sorts. And then I was watching some of the from the 2021 season where Carlos was trying to play like Bielsa and the passing moves and things, and Josh Karoma cutting in and lamping them into the far corner. And then you watch this video, and there's a lot of scuffs in here. But just for not to denigrate anyone who's appeared on this, obviously, because there are a couple of good goals in here. But just to run through them again, just to buy myself a second. The goals were Delano Bergzog versus West Brom, Jack Redoni versus West Brom, Sorba versus Rotherham, Delano Bergzog versus Ipswich, Kian Harrop versus QPR, Jack Redoni versus QPR, Delano Bergzog versus Sunderland, Josh Karoma versus Sheffield Wednesday, Bojan Radulovic versus Stoke, and Reece Healy versus Birmingham. Any of those stood out for you guys, Tom? First.
Yeah, I think the Bergzog one at home to Ipswich was a nice finish, and it was gave us a lot of promise for him as well when he did it. I think that technically, as a strike, for me, the best one in there was the Radders away at Stoke. I thought that was a really good finish, and also another one that gave me a bit of hope that we haven't signed a dud and there's actually some quality in there. So yeah, I look forward to hopefully seeing a bit more of him next season. But as a move and as a kind of overall experience and enjoyment factor, I think the last minute winner away at West Brom for me was pretty good. Jack Redoni, back post on it.
Good feeling when that went in. What about you, Brady?
Yeah, you did the Lord's work there, Matt, with pulling that together. I was thinking, people always go, "Oh, do you remember the Premier League December? Is it 2006 goal of the month?" And it's like all bangers. It's like this is the complete opposite of that. I think you'd be disappointed if it was a goal of the month for any league. But yeah, no, there's quite a few goals in it that aren't the best, but I quite liked the Bergzorg against Sunderland. I think just because it's so instinctive. It's just like I'm going to hit it through the legs and just hope for it, and it goes in. So I was kind of tossing up between that, but I think the one I'm going to go for is Radulovic against Stoke, because I just think it was like technically very quite good, and when you look at it, it's kind of like drilled into him a little bit, and he sorts his feet out well, and like Tom said, it kind of maybe not so much announced him, but it was like we'd seen glimpses of him, from Man City, that Man City game when he came on, and I just kind of felt, oh, there is something here, so that probably takes it for me. I mean, in terms of the goal, but like Tom says, I think last minute winners. I mean, you could probably argue Healy's against Birmingham just because of like what it meant at the time as well. But yeah, I think based on the goal, I'd probably go Radulovic.
Yeah, that was one of my. I think I quite enjoyed the Bergzog versus Ipswich goal because it was there's quite a good short passing move into it. A couple of passes, and Yuta Nakayama plays the ball into the channel really well, and Bergzog sort of comes in and hits it hard. And I think at the time at the game, it was just we deserved that goal so much that it felt quite good when when it smacked the back of the net. I mean, the two goals against QPR were quite nice passing moves. Redoni finds Harrop with a lovely pass in there. And then Josh Karoma versus Sheffield Wednesday as well. That's, Matos, how he breaks the play up there, and tackles. And Ben Wiles is really quick thinking to play that through to Karoma. And Josh Karoma changed that game as well. So, that was a nice goal. But Bojan's was superb. And Reece Healy's is the only one which starts with the goalkeeper and ends in the net, which everyone loves it starting from the back and play out, don't they? But shall we have a look at the winner? Town fans, thank you very much for voting. I didn't give people a lot of time to do this, and we've had a couple of hundred people jump in and do it, which is fantastic. So thank you very much for all your votes, and we really do appreciate that as well. Town fans do like to add in their own as well, which is quite funny. So a couple that have been added in. We've got Danny Ward versus Preston. I don't know who's added these, but Danny Ward versus Preston. Matty Pearson better delivery than Sorba, and that did actually make the shortlisted. Danny Ward's header against Watford and Preston, but I took them out because I wanted a top 10 rather than a top 11, 12, 13. Another one says, don't remember any of them, probably at the bar. Another one says, none of them deserve it. Next one just made me laugh because it's so blunt in its delivery. It just says, all fucking cack. I quite enjoyed the bluntness of the Yorkshireman there.
God,
But if we look at this now, so right, let's have a look for a winner, goal of the season. Right, in 10th place. So after those, so I feel like all fucking cack deserves to be higher. But in Danny Ward versus Watford was added in as well. The header, somebody's added that in, and Healy versus Millwall. I mean, emotionally, Healy versus Millwall was a great goal, wasn't it? But even though it was a tap in, in fact, Healy versus Millwall's been added by 3 people separately. So in last place, 10th is Sorba Thomas versus Rotherham. In 9th is Jack Redoni versus QPR. 8th is Cian Harrop versus QPR. 7th, quite surprisingly, Delano Bergzorg versus Ipswich Town. 6th is Delano Bergzorg versus West Brom. 5th, Delano Bergzorg versus Sunderland. 4th is Reece Healy versus Birmingham. 3rd is Jack Redoni versus West Brom. 2nd is Josh Karoma versus Sheffield Wednesday. And with 42.9% and quite the overwhelming winner is Bojan Radulovic versus Stoke City. So congratulations to Bojan for winning our Goal of the Season award. Okay, let's move on from there. So there were 2 kicks in the sack in a week. The Millwall game, which we've just mentioned very briefly in the goals there, where we won 1-0, an absolutely abysmal game, but you kind of understand it when 2 nervous teams face off against each other. Millwall were diabolical this game, and we managed to get ourselves out of the bottom 3, I think, this game, and I think Millwall might have dropped into it. Millwall looked dead and buried at this time. They had Neil Harris as manager, who's someone I've never particularly rated highly. They looked so bad. And then they just went on, and then they just started to catch fire after this, and they're beating Leicester and all sorts, aren't they, Millwall? It's phenomenal. And then finished 14th. But we had, let's talk about that Millwall game, which gave us so much hope, Brady, this game. You know, the last-minute winner, Reece Healy's back, he's scoring goals, he's scored against Coventry as well, and all of a sudden you're thinking, right, we've got a goal scorer, we might get some confidence. And then these bloody players, again, Preston, we go 1-0 up against Preston and then capitulate. I mean, that is not a penalty at Preston. That is, when we talk about bad luck and bad mistakes, it's not a penalty at Preston. It's a bollocks decision. And I argued with Dave Hattrick vehemently on this. He, as a investor neutral, probably has a more less rose tinted view than I do. But you know, that was just a terrible decision for me. And losing 4-1 was almost unforgivable. You know, the players, visibly gave up, and to go from Millwall, where everybody's running around and celebrating, to visibly giving up in the second half was such a contrast, Brady. And then after that, you've got the handball decision at Bristol City. I mean, that handball at Bristol City is one of the worst decisions to go against us this season, and it's almost ironic, really, that when we played them at home, there was a blatant handball where the guy puts his hand up in the box to push the ball away from Bergzorg, which wasn't given, and then they get a penalty for that, which was just, I mean, that when it's against you, it's against you, isn't it? And that was just painful. But I mean, the Bristol City fans, that's where it's all unravelled for me. Town fans voted the handball versus Bristol City as the low point of the season, and I don't particularly think it's the handball itself as the low point, because if Nichols saves the penalty and we win the game, we're still in with a chance. I think at that point, the Bristol City game, after the Preston capitulation and things like that, I just think that's when we knew we were done. I mean, the Rotherham result gave us a clue, Brady. But I think when that goes against you at Bristol City, after going 1-0 up in like the 83rd minute or whatever it was, to then concede in the 101st minute to something which was never a penalty, where several minutes have elapsed which shouldn't have been played. It just when it's not your season, it's not your season, is it? But I mean, some of the performances were a little bit unforgivable, weren't they?
Oh, definitely. I mean, that Millwall game that you touched on there, like, I think Millwall got exactly what they deserved. I was really disappointed with how they set up.
I wasn't.
And, you know, well, no, but I just think, you know, they got exactly what they, you know, they deserved it. I think there's, you know, and you just think, like you say, even though we're talking about that Rotherham game, you're like, oh, well, you know, this is a big win. Like, hopefully we can build on it. And I remember because Tom and I I think we were delaying to preview the Bristol game, and we reacted straight after the Preston like briefly, and we just couldn't believe it. Like we were, you know, we just saw him keep going in. There's no other word to describe it. It was an absolute capitulation, and it was shocking, you know. And everyone looks cooked and like absolutely knackered. And you know I don't think like what infuriated me was that I forget the striker's name, but his hat trick, like every goal was pretty much exactly the same move.
Omar, something, wasn't it?
Yeah, and so it was shocking, and I think
it came on as a sub as well with like 20 minutes left.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It was ridiculous, but you could tell they were knackered, and it kind of brought up the thing which I know Dave likes to call him who must not be blamed, but it kind of brought up the questions about Neil Warnock and the pre-season, which Andre Breitenreiter, probably best quote of the season. What was it? Pub and more concerned with pub and golf or whatever. But yeah, I think it did kind of. You were like, yeah, these guys are knackered, and then the Bristol game, you kind of like, oh, well, they're not going to get anything here, and to lead for as long as they did, and it's an absolute kick in the teeth. Like it was, you know, it was an awful decision. I know we said it at the time, but I do think the reaction from some section of the fans, like with the misogynistic comments to Rebecca Welsh, was shocking. It's an absolutely shocking decision. But as we kind of mentioned, you know, there was a male referee who gave a penalty for handball outside the box for Rotherham like 2 days before. So, you know, and let's get used to it in League One as well. But you know, unfortunately, the standard of refereeing is not going to be much better. So I'm sure we'll all handle that nice and, you know, nice and fair. But yeah, it was a shocking decision, and I can completely understand why it was the low point in the season, because, like you say, it's not actually the decision, but it's. I know you can't do football like this, but it kind of stung for me as well, because it's not like Bristol City needed it. You know, like I think if it's not like they're particularly screaming for it loads, and like, you know.
Do you know what? Naki Wells, get in the bin, Naki Wells. You could have missed that penalty for Town.
My mate was furious with Naki Wells because he celebrated a penalty as well.
Yeah, unbelievable. It's like he didn't know what position we were in the table or something. And he's going around.
It's supposed to be a town hero, Naki. What's going on? Yeah. I'd love him back next season in League One.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, take it back now.
Just for 1 year. Yeah, redeem yourself, Naki. You know, you've got to redeem yourself now, pal.
Yeah, no, it killed us, didn't it? You know, like I think that's the thing, because again, we played quite well in that game, and as you've touched on, there's a lot of moments in some of these matches where you're like, oh, if they're just, and they just never quite did they? And again, absolute crushing. And I remember, you know, I think the positive was that they picked themselves up after that Preston game. But yeah, just to have that straight after, right at the end of the game, and you know, we talk a lot about like they're not, you know, footballers and blah blah blah, but you know, they are humans as well. And I felt quite personally sorry for Turton, because like he's just come back after all that time off, and like it's just not. I don't know, like yeah, I can't imagine what he was
done
thinking.
The right thing, and he'd kept his hands down and blocked the cross, which we don't do a lot, blocking crosses, do we? So you know, it was a novelty. Maybe this is why we don't block crosses anymore. But it was a novelty that we blocked a cross, and he got penalised for good defending. There you go.
Yeah, it's sick now. I mean, we're going to come on after that, but I mean, yeah, that was a sickness too.
Yeah, the real sickness for me and my low point of the season was the week after, because we knew it was done. And that's the Swansea game, where we had to beat Swansea, who had nothing whatsoever to play for. And to lose 4-0 in the manner that we did was, quite frankly, disgraceful. And I don't care whether that's aimed at players or managerial. It was just horrendous, wasn't it? I mean, everything that day was rubbish. I mean, I can take my own responsibility. Did I, as a Town fan, make enough noise to get behind them? You know, everything was just rubbish. I know it's you can't blame Town fans for losing 4-0 at home to Swansea, but the point is nobody was up for it. You know, Town fans were quiet. The players weren't up for it. And nobody seemed like. I think the Bristol City game had kind of killed us. That's why maybe it's right being the low point of the season. But coming into it, I mean, the fans were flat. You know, I include myself in that. Nervous, and it just transmits, doesn't it? And players were nervous, and that transmits back to the stands and stuff sometimes. And really bad day. And this is the moment where Breitenreiter decides to go nuclear as well afterwards, doesn't he? And he really sort of hangs out Sorba Thomas and Bergzog. He doesn't name them, but it's very clear the next week who he means. Sorba Thomas, Bergzog, Jaheim Headley don't figure it really again, do they? But Sorba comes on as a sub, doesn't he, against Birmingham and puts in one of the most pointless performances, which is akin to a sulking child, I've ever seen. I'm really disappointed in him for that. But this, and they're the ones who get his wrath. And to be honest, I don't blame Sorbaton about it, because up until the Swansea game, he was up there for me as perhaps player of the season, Sorba Thomas. And I was very disappointed in how he kind of let himself down a bit with the last 3 games. Really disappointed, because up until then, I thought he'd been magnificent. He was the highest highest chance creator. Get my words out eventually. The highest chance creator in the Championship, which shows the value that he has to us and the value that he'll have next season to whoever he moves to. But there's always been that sort of personality clash, hasn't there, between Sorba Thomas and Town fans, and he's not quite the personality Town fans love to rally behind, because he's a little bit, yeah. But
as Neil said, he can fall out in a room with himself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. You can, yeah. But I mean, the thing with Breitenreiter's comments, the one about golf, he's gone after Neil Warnock for the preseason stuff, which we covered earlier. And I agreed with Matt Glennon as well. And sorry, Matt, we usually get you on these end of season reviews, but this has been put together very quickly and very shoddily. And a man of your professional quality deserves more. So that's why you're not on this, Matt. So I do apologize if you're listening. But I agreed with him on Radio Leeds. The players didn't react positively to what Breitenreiter said, and they were never going to react. We've seen how sort of sulky they are and how they needed the hands holding under Neil Warnock, and they needed to be loved and cuddled and what have you to get the best out of them. And Neil Warnock knew that. That's not really criticism. It's just the way these players and their personalities are. Sometimes you kick up the backside works for some people. It doesn't for me. Put your arm around me, I work better. Kick me up the backside, I feel sorry for myself a bit. It's similar to the players. But to sort of like hang them out, there was just, and I kind of broached this a little bit, Tom, on the podcast as well. You've got a huge game, a must-win game against Birmingham coming up, where you have to win to stay up. A lot of people were fed up with the players, because it's 2 years of this from players who really should have delivered more over the last 2 seasons, and they felt Breitenreiter was right to do this and right to double foot them. And I think once the missed on that, or once the celebrations to that, if you like, because everybody was quite happy for that, but I think once clarity sort of kicks in, not to go Mark Fotheringham on you, but once that clarity kicks in, you just kind of think, hang on, was this a little bit too early to do that? And I felt like it was a bit too early before the game. Matt Glennon said the same thing. Do you really want to isolate and marginalize your most attacking outlet before the biggest must-win game for years? And I felt that was such a mistake from him. I mean, he could have done this at the end of the season. So that's why on the podcast towards the end of the season, I touched on this slightly, because I didn't want to stir a nest too much, when we need to win games and what have you. I didn't want to be the podcaster who like calls Breitenreiter this and that. But I just felt there was like an element of self-preservation from Andre Breitenreiter, where he wanted to get ahead of the narrative and just create it himself and say, hey, this shit, these were all idiots when I got here. I couldn't do anything, And I don't know whether he was just looking after his reputation. Because I think listening to a few people, Brady, when we did the deep dive, there were a couple. Mark Meadows was skeptical of some of the stuff he's done, and so it just felt like he was maybe doing that early so that people wouldn't say, "Oh, Breitenreiter's failed again." So he's getting ahead of the story, if you like, and that it just felt that way to me, Tom. That there was an element of him doing that to cover his own back because he knew he wasn't going to be here next year, and he was looking to his next job and say, "Hey, I took the Huddersfield job, but it was a lost cause. Look at this, this, and this."
Yeah, it's not. It didn't help anything, did it? It obviously didn't galvanise those players that played in that Birmingham game, and I think that's exactly what it was. Was what you just said is him just saving a bit of face, really, before he leaves, because he could have waited till he left and said this, come out and said it. But yeah, to say it whilst you're manager, I don't know. I don't remember being overly impressed with it. I don't think. I think it was. I think, if to be honest, a bit embarrassing. Really, like the way he's done it. It was a bit. Yeah, almost like, yeah, just making excuses. When now going back through these last few games, I know the players. There was a lot. We realised the players weren't good enough, but I do think some decisions from a managerial point of view didn't help. And I think what annoys me mainly in this running is that we were the only kind of team that, bar Rotherham, that were in that pack that could still stay up, that just died and dropped away.
Yeah.
Everyone else were fighting to the last game of the season, weren't they? And that's the most disappointing thing.
Yeah, Brady, I'll come to you, but I mean, the Birmingham and Ipswich games were just a letdown. Really, we don't really need to go too much detail. Birmingham, we just never we scored the goal. We scored a goal against it, but I mean, it was nervous, and they were nervous, and we were the slightly better team. But you'd be hard pushed to say we deserved to win the game. But the question I have for you really is when Andre Breitenreiter came in, he said initially, one of his initial quotes was, he said it was impossible to change the style midway through a season. When we came back from the international break after the 0-0 against Rotherham, it was evident at that point that something needed to change to me. And, I'm just a average fan with a microphone and a big mouth, but it just seemed like that we'd run out of a little bit of steam. So we needed to tweak a few things. And I wanted to see something new. I wanted to see a tactical adaptation, a progression, if you like. But instead, if anything, it became more passive, like under Darren Moore, than it was under, front footed under Jonathan Worthington. I mean, the question really is, I know this is all in hindsight, so it's not been smart after the event or anything. It's just but should he have implemented his style straight away? I mean, yes, there were fitness issues if he wants to play at 100 miles an hour, but you do have 50,000 subs in the championship, which you can bring on 7 of them or whatever in 3 different intervals. It's obvious that that he didn't really believe in what he was trying to deliver, and that filters down to players as well. And so did he torn the book up, or was he quite simply just the right man for the project, but at the wrong time? This is something else that sort of went through my mind at the time was, and I think I said this on one of the podcasts and got a raised eyebrow from Cosy, but it feels like the kind of guy you bring in for a reset once you're safe, at the end of the season. You give him the summer, you let him plan the summer and everything. But he's not much of a firefighter. So at the time, I suggested Gary Rowett or Michael Duff till the end of the season, or Neil Warnock, but he'd just gone to Aberdeen, hadn't he? But it felt like it just needed one of those to get us safe, and that maybe the board kind of like took their eye off that a little bit, thinking we were going to be okay, and not really realizing the serious nature of the shit we were in maybe at the time, and thinking everything's going to be okay. But although to get Duff and Rowett on a short term, to difficult for them to take that, without any future prospects, I'm sure. But yeah, like I say, it's just in hindsight, because it didn't work out. If it works out, we don't have that conversation, do we? But it's just, and I don't think anybody could really foresee the incredible role that Sheffield Wednesday, incredible role fulfilled by Danny Roll, if you like, and Cifuentes at QPR. They just went on phenomenal runs at this stage, and they just dragged. I don't think Sheffield Wednesday had left the bottom 3 until something like the second to last game of the season or something. And it was just how they dragged themselves out of it was unbelievable. You know, such a great job he did there, and Cifuentes has done an equally great job at QPR. And when you look back, well, maybe if we'd have won that game at Rotherham, or maybe if we'd have been a bit smarter there, or maybe we'd have been a bit more this, and this, like everybody does. I've asked you a lot of questions there about that, but what did you really think about Andre Breitenreiter, and were you quite sad that he left in the end?
It's a really difficult. I think when he was announced, I was, and I think people said this at the time, and I don't disagree. I think it's probably, in terms of on paper, it was probably the most impressive appointment Town have made in a very long time. A lot more experience than David Wagner was when he joined, and Carlos Corberán. So I think there was a lot to like about it. I think I would lean with what you said. It's probably maybe the right guy at the wrong time. Even though he had an impressive CV, and I do think we could have maybe seen more from him. I expected maybe a little bit more, but maybe that's just a hope that kills you. But you look like he was sixth manager we had in the last 2 seasons. I just think they were he was kind of he had to perform a miracle, and I think I think Stephen Chicken pointed it out, but under him we were kind of mid-table maybe, or lower mid-table. So it's just all the damage was kind of done before, and it's I don't know. I think it looked like a good appointment, but and maybe this is again being wise after the fact, but to me it kind of looks like a pattern with where I think and Kevin Nagel's maybe admitted this, not in this exact words, but I think they made a lot of mistakes and were quite naive and assumed we'd be fine. I appreciate when he took over, we were all guns blazing under Neil, but if you look at kind of everything that's happened through the season, I think they've kind of expected we'll be okay. And look, like you say, here we are now when the dust is settled, and maybe we can look at this and be like, oh, look what you did wrong. But it is quite clear, we weren't. I know there was all the stuff at the start of the season in terms of spending and the lack of that, but then they initially said they weren't going to spend loads in January, hung on to more for a bit too longer, then admitted that was a mistake. I think, it's been a very difficult season for Kevin Nagel, and I'm doing a cosy, and I think I'm jumping on one of your points ahead of time. But yeah, I suppose for Breitenreiter, it was clearly, it was clearly these comments were protecting himself. I think you can say that. And look, if you're in his situation, I think anyone would do the similar. And from the sounds of it, and stuff we'd heard under previous managers, there clearly is an issue, regardless of that. But I'd be very interested. He's definitely, whatever job Breitenreiter gets next, I think we'll probably hear a little bit more about what happened, which will be very interesting to see. But yeah, it's a shame, really. It just didn't work out, did it? And I think I personally wanted him to stay on, because I think I probably would have, he needed a rebuild, he needs a reset, he needs a full pre-season. But I do think his comments, it's not a football manager, you can't just completely swap out the squad. There'll still be a lot of people who are part of the team next season, and I just think it was very much bridges burned, wasn't it? It's not the same. But if my manager had criticised my team, and then it's like, oh, but I've got to work super hard for him, I'd maybe be a bit reluctant, particularly if they've just thrown me under the bus publicly. So, yeah, it's just I think maybe a good appointment, just wrong time, and it just looked too late. Far too few games to change anything really. But I do agree with you. He should have just maybe gone for the style, and I still think we probably would have gone down, but at least we could have been like, hey, at least he tried to do something, at least we're trying to go for it.
Poor Cosy catching strays in there. How would you how would you rate Kevin Nagel's first full season? Because obviously he's come in, and I liken it really to sort of when you buy a new house or something. I buy a house, not a new house, because it's obviously old, and then you kind of look at it from the outside, you think, oh, that looks all right, does that? And then you kind of have a little walk around, and it's all right. You think, all right, I'll buy it. Yeah, cool. And then when you sort of get to the bones of it, it's like all of a sudden there's damp in the corner, there's mold, and then all of a sudden you lift the rug, and people have swept all the rubbish underneath it and stuff, and it kind of feels a bit like he's probably not had enough time to do the due diligence that he may have liked because of the timing of it. But I love his passion for the club. I think it's great, to have someone come in who's not connected with the club and just fall in love with it straight away. I think he's genuine when he does that. I really like that. But I think he's probably bitten off more than he thought he was biting off originally. He's gone for a mini burger and he's ended up with a big quarter pounder job on his hands. And there's a lot to do. And I mean, he's talked a lot in this first year. I mean, in fairness, he was restricted by the FFI stuff in January. I'm sure he would have liked to have made a very, as Dave Hartrick says, a very splashy sign. We signed someone big just to sign it, kind of, get the fans on side, but he couldn't. They brought Neil Warnock in. Maybe that was a splashy thing. In hindsight, that was. Although to be fair, in not necessarily in hindsight, I didn't want him to come back. So, that was probably a mistake. And then Darren Moore, obviously a mistake. And I think we said that at the time, Brady. I was like, no, I don't want this guy, and that was obviously a mistake. But I don't think Breitenreiter was. I think Breitenreiter looked really good on paper, but I think they've kind of got this first year, and it's been a very hard learning year for him. And I think the future under him will be much better. It's just unfortunately going to be a level lower than I think they anticipated where they were working from, and it's going to be difficult because they've got different rules now to adapt to again, different spending limits, and But Huddersfield Town in League One should be not the biggest club there. Birmingham are obviously the biggest club in League One, but Huddersfield are a fairly big deal at that level. I mean, it doesn't win you leagues or get you in the playoffs or anything like that. In fact, it can have a negative effect where I think Mansfield seem to have a real problem with us from 2004 and really want to knock us off our perch. That was quite fun, waking up to being relegated and also Mansfield fans rejoicing. No, that was a really strange time. But there we go. So I think, it's been a tough year, but I think things, it's almost, I'm going to start, with D-Ream above my head, but with things can only get better. But I think things are going to get better now. And how would you guys rate it really from your perspective? Tom, you want to go first?
The season, or Nagel?
Yeah, Kevin Nagel's first full season as
Yeah,
an owner.
I think, obviously it's not everything that has gone wrong. A lot of it has been out of his hands. It's a lot of stuff that was in place before he kind of took over, didn't it? So, I mean, it was always going to be tough coming into a completely different environment, different kind of league, completely different to what he's used to over in America. So, if we're going out of 10, I'd give him a pretty good 6 out of 10. I think there's been mistakes. I don't think there's been that many mistakes, but the mistakes that have been made have potentially been quite big ones. And I think that is where you potentially just pointing fingers a little bit. But I'm really positive for what's to come. And like you touch on, Matt, I think we have got a guy who actually does care about a team and a town that he's only known about probably for about a year. So I am looking forward to what's to come with him.
Juice?
I think, look, I feel like maybe I've been a bit critical of him. I mean, you look at the new officers, for example. I think he's done a lot of good stuff off the pitch, and I think you've got to give him credit. And I agree. I do think his heart's in the right place, and I'm actually quite excited about the future because, ultimately, whether you're a Nagel fan or you a little bit critical, maybe it's just gingers who are critical of him. Who knows? But like me and Pods. But yeah, I think he will. I think he will get it right next season because he kind of has to. And look, like he take it over in a bit of a rush. And your house analogy has got me slightly worried as a man who's about to move into a new house. And then things aren't perfect as they seem. But I think it's very fair. Like you don't really know till you get there. And I do think he's been very good with the updates, kind of off the pitch. But I just think. Look, like we have to kind of address the elephant in the room. Like fans aren't happy with his appointments and stuff on the pitch. Like Mark Cartwright, Jake Edwards. Some fans are very critical of that. And ultimately he's kind of the owner, and it kind of all goes to him. And maybe it's just unfortunately he's been not appointing the best people. We don't know. I think it's very, very difficult, and I don't think you can say.
It's hard to measure Mr. Edwards' job, isn't it? Because it's not quiet, and it's not out. Well, he's quiet, and he's not out there saying I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. It's quite. I mean, people. It's hard to do that because how do you measure the job he's done? Do you know what I mean? So how do you know he's doing a bad job because you don't know what he's done? And because you don't know what he's done doesn't mean he's necessarily doing a bad job either. I mean, Matt Cartwright's easier to analyze, isn't it? Because the signings that come in and the medical team and the injuries and stuff like that. But again, he was parachuted in July. The summer recruitment was Neil Warnock wanted to be in charge of that, so you can't blame him for too much of that. January is a tough time to work in, and there's things you can question there, sure. But I mean, I'm willing to. I mean, I've been probably quite critical of him at times, maybe unfair, maybe justly unfair, unfair at times towards him. So I think I need to shut up and let him do his job. To be honest, I mean, not in public, I'm not, but in private, I probably have been a little bit scathing at times of a couple of things. But I mean, now he's got the role that he thought he was coming to. So, there's nowhere to hide after this summer for him. If he does well, I'm going to be the first person to say, do you know what? Mark Cartwright's decent. Andrew Breitenreiter thought it was decent. He didn't have to say that. He was burying everybody else. He didn't have to, he didn't have to say nice things about someone. So yeah, for me, it's a clean slate for both of them. From me, I mean, Kevin said they both had to re-interview for the jobs, kind of thing, didn't he? I don't think I'm misquoting him. So he's decided they're the right people there. And like I say, the first 12 months has just been such a head scratcher, I think, for them. I think I'm quite prepared now to just say, look, let's draw a line under that and let's go from here and let's see how you guys do. And I wish you both the best of luck because when they've both interviewed, I think they've both come across quite well. So
I think with Nagel, what I would say is he was really unfortunate in terms of town fans. I think maybe the reason patience is thin is because we've seen a lot of underperformance the previous years and a lot of talk from chairman that we're going to do this, and we kind of at that point where we need to see it. And look, I think what I will say is I think the margin for error was incredibly low given the squad, and I just like Tom said, all the decisions on the pitch, like they just had to go right, and unfortunately they didn't. And look, like I feel like maybe I've been a bit critical, and I do think his heart's in the right place, and I actually am quite excited for the future. But we're here talking about a team that's in the third division. I don't think you can say it's been a great start to the tenure, but that doesn't mean this is kind of what I always say with football. It's not black and white. It's not Nagel's a disaster.
Newcastle, Juventus.
Yeah. But for me, Nagel's not a disaster, or he's not a success. I think it's just let's wait and see. But look, he's made mistakes, and we got relegated. But I'm very excited about the future, and I think like I said, everything he's done off the pitch is really positive, and I'm excited for what the future holds for sure.
Happy with Duff? Just a quick yes or no. Happy with Michael Duff? Both.
Yeah.
Tom is yes. I am as well. I think is who. I think me and you, Brady, both wanted him 12 months ago, didn't we? So
100%. Yeah.
We've got what we wanted 12 months later, but there we go. I think the last thing that we're going to do now, if Tom's still got time, is we are going to go through the prediction league. So at the start of every season, I always ask people for their 1 to 24. 41 people. Brady didn't do it. I'm still at a loss. We only found this out earlier that Brady didn't submit a submission. So great English, man. So the man who won it last year and managed to win a host of Magic Rock goodies was a certain Mr. Thomas Bradshaw. Can Tom keep his crown? Is the question. I mean, it's more of a kind of like a baggy cap he's got on at the minute. If you watch on YouTube, if you're not, he's wearing an LA. Is it LA Dodgers or is it just a Los Angeles cap that you've got on?
Lardass, it stands for.
Fair enough. I was going Los Angeles, but Tom said it's Lardass, so it's just great. Right, so let's have a look at the championship. So the results. So quite easy. You pick your 1 to 24. The points, how the points work. I haven't got them in front of me, but essentially you get 30 points if you get the position bang on, and then as the further away they get, you get less points, and then eventually it gets into a negative equity, if you like. So, for example, let me pick on somebody really at random here. So, who's got -4? So, Hull City were probably the worst predicted team out of everyone. Somebody predicted Hull City to finish 7th. I wonder who that was. And they did, but a lot of people predicted Hull to go down. So if you predicted Hull to go down, you would get minus points. So Phil Senior, you got -4 points. Sandra of Twitter shithousing fame got -4 points. Graham Rayner got -12 for Ipswich because he predicted Ipswich to go down. So if this is how you get your negative points. So this is how the game works. So you get points the closer you get to your prediction. Okay. So Birmingham, nobody predicted Birmingham to finish 22nd. One person out of 41 predicted Blackburn to finish 19th, and that was Phil Clayton. Bristol City, 11th. We had 4 people predicted 11th. Dan Porritt, Jerry Hinnan, Luke Haig, and Wayne Dulatta, a.k.a. Ben Duckett Jr. Cardiff City finished 12th. We had Josh Quirk nailed that 12th position prediction. Coventry came 9th. A lot of people had Coventry down for the playoffs. Josh Phillips had them 9th. Ludo Schreiber had them 9th, as did Nathan Hosker and Richard Kosmala. Only one person predicted Huddersfield Town to finish 23rd. I mean, Brady, when we go back to the start of the season, when we did the preview show and stuff, I think everybody thought we would be in relegation trouble. And we took a lot of shit for this when we did our pre-season show. And a lot of YouTube comments came in going, oh, you guys, your predictions don't know anything. And, and stuff like that. And I had to sort of point out that aside from the Carlos Corberan 3rd place season, me and Cozzy have absolutely nailed the exact position Huddersfield Town have finished in for 3 of those 4 years. So, suck a fat one. And but only person this time to actually name that is Pozza. And I believe that only happened because he had that big fallout with Kevin Nagel and spat his dummy out. Pozza did.
I wouldn't go there, Ginger.
Yeah, honestly, that was absolutely phenomenally fun. Was that? I had so much fun in WhatsApp when that happened. I mean, Pozza was quite upset by the whole thing, and I think Kevin Nagel was probably a bit nonplussed by it because I think there was a big communication breakdown, really, wasn't there, with regards to English versus American humor. But yeah, I thought that was fantastic for content purposes. Anyway, Hull City 7th, predicted by Johnny Gillespie, Matthew Shaw. Ipswich 2nd, nobody predicted that. Leeds 3rd, as predicted by Dag Barnett, Josh Phillips, and Rohan. I can't remember his last name. Sorry, Rohan, you didn't put it in the email. This is obvious. I mean, whoever Huddersfield play, first home game of the season, goes on to win the league. Everybody knows that, apart from Andrew Jagger, Damien Wales, John Lamb, and Jonathan Hildred. Everybody else had Leicester to win the league. Middlesbrough 8th. Middlesbrough were a very fancy team. They finished 8th, and only Joanne Floss, Paul Gillespie, Johnny's dad, obviously knows more. Cozzy again, and Sandra predicted that to happen. Millwall in 13th, as predicted by Ludo Schieber, myself. Norwich 6th, predicted by Ben Harrison, Damien Wales, Pete Liversidge, Tom Bradshaw, nailing one.
Always believe in David Wagner.
Yeah, I had them 5th, and he let me down right at the end. Plymouth was actually the 3rd most correctly predicted team in 21st, as predicted by Dag Barnett, David Goward, aka Clibbins Jr., Jack Watson, Matthew Davies, Matthew Shaw, Morgan Lakomova, Paul Gillespie, Pete Liversidge, Phil Clayton, Richard Kosmala once more, Wayne Duckett Delatta. I know nobody predicted Preston in 10th or QPR in 18th. Rotherham, lots of people predicted Rotherham to finish 24th. I'm not going to go through all the names because it's most people. Sheffield Wednesday were very, very strongly predicted to finish in the bottom 3, not 20th. But only Dan Porritt, again, can hold his head high, as can Graham Rayner, Matthew Davies, Sandra, and Zach Armitage. Southampton 4th. Only person to predict that right was Matt Durkin, Durka, and Stoke City in 17th, as predicted by Jerry Hinnan. Sunderland in 16th was predicted by nobody. Swansea in 14th, predicted by Damien Wales, Dag Barnett, Pete Liversidge, and Richard Kosmala, again, the Bear.
On
I
fire.
know, the Bears on fire. Watford in 15th, as predicted by Morgan Lacomova. West Brom in 5th, predicted by Andrew Jagger, Dag Barnett, Jack Watson, Jerry Hinnan, and Matt Wilson. Now, only a couple of people predicted correct playoff winners. And who were they, Tom Bradshaw? You.
Me, yeah.
Yeah. Tom Bradshaw predicted Southampton to win the playoffs, as did Morgan Lacoma, Matthew Davies, and Harvey Burridge. The Huddersfield Town Player of the Year, of which he got 25 points, was Michael Helik, as predicted by Jonathan Hildred and Ollie Fisher. And I cannot believe that more people thought Brahima Diarra would win Player of the Season than Michael Helik. Town fans, this is why none of you are rich from gambling. Right, so that means we want to know the position. So it's very much Eurovision. There was a points tally before we added on the playoff points, and then a points tally after. But I'm just going to do the final standings, and we'll do it in reverse order. In last place, Lee Morris with 246 points. And the reason why Lee Morris is finished last is because he has this bizarre hatred of anything Carlos Corberan, and he predicted West Brom to finish 24th. So fair enough. He lives out his hatred, and I've got respect for that. But
it's hating season, to be fair.
It is hating season, yeah, absolutely. So Lee Morris, you finished in 41st. In fact, no, in 42nd place is Brady with 0.
Yeah.
41st, Lee Morris. 40th is Mark Meche with 256. Sorry, Mark, if I pronounced that wrong. Next, unbelievable. Phil Senior, supposed to be our expert. 39th place with 258. Rohan Yor, 38th with 272. Matt Wilson, 274. David Goward, aka Clibbins Jr., with 280. So you're 41, 40, 39, 38, 37, 36. 35, Jack Watson with 298. 34, Zach Armitage with 304. 33, Graham Rayner with 304 points. 32, Martin Sykes. Remember those match reports, Martin? Bring them back. They were awesome. Matt Durkin, 31st with 307. Tied with Joanne Floss, who has also got 307. Tom the Mammoth Woolard is on 312, and he's joint with Adam Blackburn, who finished 28th and 29th. Pozza, I thought Pozza would come higher since they got a few nailed on. He's got 313 points, and he finished in 27th. Jonathan Hildred, 26 with 316. Wayne Duckett Delata is 25th with 317. Josh Quirk, who finished 3rd last year, is down in 24th with 323. And he is level with the man who's got Andy Booth's number 23, David Hartrick. We know where the knowledge is in the podcast now, don't we? Stephen Chicken did actually submit an answer, but he put Roman Reigns, Monaco, and all sorts of rubbish in his thing. So I took it that he didn't really want to do it, and he was telling me that in a very different style. 21st is Josh Phillips with 330. 20th with also 330, Johnny Gillespie. 19th, Ludo Scheiber with 334. 18th, Luke Haig, 338. 17th, Ben Harrison with 338. Paul Gillespie has beaten his son, Johnny Gillespie, in 16th with 340. Andrew Jagger with 340 in 15th. Damien Wales in 14th with 344. Phil Clayton, 348 in 13th. Sandra, not just a Twitter wind-up merchant, is 12th with 351. Jerry Hinnan, the knowledge is in the USA. He's 11th with 354. Pete Liversidge starts our top 10 with 356. Nathan Hosker in 9th with 356. Ollie the Fish Fisher in 8th with 365. 7th place is Tom Bradshaw with 366, which means we're going to get.
I'm happy with that.
Which means we're going to get a new champion, and that is not going to be 6th place Harvey Burridge with 372. 5th place Richard Kosmala, 373. 5th place Matthew Davies, 399. Oh no, 4th place, sorry. Right. Bronze medal, Dag Barnett, 399. 2nd place, and this pains me a little bit because I was winding him up because I think he also predicted Stoke to finish 2nd. Morgan Lacoma got 407, which means the winner with 468 points, and it not even being close, And it really pains me to say this because Magic Rock have binned us off and are no longer sponsoring this podcast. So there's no prize for the winner because they decided that they're just going to cut everything off. The winner is me, and I get nothing for it. So there we go. With 468 points, I get nothing apart from a smug satisfaction of telling Tom that his crown has fallen to me. But there
Well
we go.
done, Matt. Well done.
I'm genuinely very good at getting the positions within a couple of places of each other, if not on. So there we go. So whoever said that we're not very good with our predictions at the start of the season, you heard what I have to say before, and I now stand by that. Right, guys, thank you very much for joining us. But before we go, just let us know what's next for the Juice and the Doodler, because you two have fly in the nest, so to speak. I'm very keen to keep both of you because I love you both to bits. Before you say what's next, I want to thank you both so much for what you've done for the podcast over the last couple of years. Brady, you genuinely have helped run this brilliantly, not just like by doing the warm-up, but the social media stuff, some of the graphics in Canva. It's just been such an enormous help for me to have you there doing stuff, and I'm not going to let you go very easily, by the way. Tom, same with you. Some of the graphics, the drawings that you do are phenomenally good, and there's no other podcast that I've seen can say that they've got someone as talented at drawing and bringing things to life in the way that you do. So we've been a very, very lucky show, and a lucky bunch of Huddersfield fans that we've had you two giving up your time to actually do things for nothing for Huddersfield fans. And because that's what we do at the end of the day, we give up our time to do nothing, and we only want to provide not a service, but just the reason why this podcast was set up in the first place was to we were fed up of the bullshit from the, and to say this, we've got talkSPORT Fan Network in the corner if you're watching it on YouTube, but we're fed up of like the rubbish that people would spout about Huddersfield when we're in the Premier League. So we set this up as something that Huddersfield fans could listen to. At least if anybody talks rubbish about Huddersfield, at least it's Huddersfield fans doing it. And we've managed to move the podcast on to a certain level, and I wouldn't have been able to do that without both of you, who've added enormous amounts of work over there. So thank you both from me. And if I could give you anything, I would, but obviously we do this for nothing, so you get nothing, same as what I got for the award. But I'm not going to let you go very easily. You're both going to still be involved as far as I'm concerned with things. Brady scoffs at that, but Brady, I know where you live, Brady, so, and I know you've told me where the new house is, so I'm going to turn up with my roadcaster thing. But guys, just let us know what you've got. Are you in a position to say what you've got coming up next, or what you've got in store?
We've got ideas. We're fatigued from previewing basically, and there's something on the way, but we're just not quite sure what that looks like at this moment. But yeah, keep your eyes peeled for some more Brady and Tom stuff eventually. But yeah, I've loved it, Matt. Thanks for giving me opportunity to kind of basically keep in touch with Huddersfield Town as not living in the town anymore. It's the one thing it has done being on this podcast is made me feel like I'm still kind of part of the fan base, at least.
You're not leaving the podcast, Tom. I've established.
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah, I definitely will do an Alan Lee cameo now and again, of course.
Those elbows down.
No, like that was really lovely of you, Matt, and for me as well, like thanks for giving us the opportunity. I think I was annoying you on Twitter, and here we are, like, what is it, 4 years later? It's nuts, but I know people will probably get sick of this, but really appreciated all the help and opportunities you've given us with the podcast. So we wouldn't be able to do something we want to do without you and without all your support. So thank you so much for that. This is when you do the awkward bloke thing, go like, oh yeah, piss off. But yeah, no, it's honestly we're really grateful for everything you've done for us. And yeah, our new podcast is going to be called And He Took That Chance, and we're basically going to we're working out what to do, but I think what we will say is it's not going to be weekly stuff like you guys do here, because obviously you guys on the Sunday, you review the games great and give the opinion of the fans, and obviously We Are Terriers for the invested neutrals look at things, and what you both
advertise them. They never advertise us.
Hey, they've mentioned us a few times, so
They did this
you
week,
know,
actually. Dave tends to. Yeah, Dave does.
yeah, got to
Stephen
give
not so much.
people their flowers. But yeah, so yeah, we're not going to do anything similar. But what we are going to do is something a little bit more timeless, and something that you can
You would
dip
just
in
want to
and
have
out
fun,
of.
don't you? Instead of
Just want to have
I mean,
fun because let's be honest, it's been
Gingers just want to have fun. I think that's the next song that I'll get Adam Jarrell to do for you. Just for
absolutely,
you.
yeah. If you could, that'd be great. But yeah, I think we just want to have a bit of fun, and Town. Let's be honest, these last 4 seasons, apart from the Carlos Corberán season, which feels like a massive red herring, it's been pretty miserable. Not just for us, but for the fans, and thanks to the fans who've sent in questions and all stuff. Like, because let's be honest, Tom, how many times have we gone to do a preview and we're like, oh, don't want to talk about it. It's been awful. So hopefully, when we'll announce soon. So keep like before the season starts. Maybe we're working things out, but we want to remind people we do love this club. Even though it doesn't feel like it, and as I say, we've got called miserable sods throughout the season. We do love Huddersfield Town, and I think everyone needs to be reminded why they put themselves through that. So hopefully that's the next project, and hopefully we can remind people of that.
Absolutely. So yeah, and that leads me on nicely just to say that the future of the podcast in general is a little bit up in the air at the minute. I'm not sure what is going to happen. You might have heard me a few minutes ago to say Magic Rock no longer sponsor us, which is true. They want to go down the cycling route rather than football. But Richard Burhouse brought us in a couple of years ago, and I want to thank Richard immensely for the support of him and Magic Rock over that period, which has been great. So coupled with that, people no longer being able to sort of give time to the podcast. I'm not sure if there's a future for it yet. But what we're going to do is we're going to sit down and sort of have a think of that over the summer. So there'll be no sort of summer specials or anything like that. I'm going back into coaching and scouting as well for football next season. So I'm going to I'm coaching currently my little boys team, which is a lot of fun. Much more fun than watching Huddersfield Town, I'll be honest. Because just watching kids play football because they love it rather than watching people run around because they get paid for it is a lot more fun. So I don't know what the future holds right now on that. So keep your eyes peeled. And I think after that, I think we need to go out with a bit of a smile, don't we? So a perfect way to go out is with a Tom Bradshaw, Adam Jarrell mashup. So here we go. So enjoy Dean Hoyle and Kevin Nagel rapping. Thanks for everybody for listening. And we may see you next season, but we're going to have a break first.
Relegation. Relegate any team in this pyramid from Prem to League 2. But you can't be any geek off the street. Got to be handy with the team, if you know what I mean, earn your keep. Relegation! Fucking hell. It was a clear black night, a clear white moon. Me, Dean Hall, was on the street, trying to consume a merry England tea cake so I could get some joy. And then my phone rings, I hear an American voice.
I'm from the west side, nice to meet you, Dean. I'm on a mission trying to buy your struggling soccer team. I love a project like this, damn it, it makes me tick. And I own a team called Sacramento Republic.
So I thought to myself, we sold Toffolo and Lewis. The team is looking fucked, so I said, let's do this. I jumped in my ride, straight to paddock. Then I thought, fuck, I've got to tell one.
Sorry, Neil, time to go, we got a different plan. We're getting Darren Moore in, we think he's our man. Gonna play some better soccer than them Route 1 tricks. And Dave will keep you all updated with those YouTube clips.
I'm getting jacked, I'm hating myself. I can't believe they've taken Neil as well. They took my things, they took my Rolodex. I looked out and Janet said, damn, what's next?
Darren Moore's style of football is just silence the ground. I gotta work out the conversion from dollars to pounds. We gotta pay him off quick before there's riots in town. Get Andre Breitenreiter in before we end up down.
We got 45 points, we're going fucking down. I can't believe it's happening to Huddersfield Town. If I had wings I would fly, let me contemplate. I glance through the bam-bams and see my homie Nagel.
9 wins in the league and 18 draws. Nagel Dog's about to orchestrate a fucking sleepwalk. Now they're bitching and yelling, it's a tad bit late. Nagel Dog and Huddersfield, time to relegate. us all down and it made me explode. Now I'm switching my focus back to Sacramento. On the bright side, if you were with us live, you could have won in the draw, could have won a PS5.
Now Nagel's got the team, and that's a known fact. But before I got jacked, we were on the same track. Back up, cause it's on. Former chairman, that's me, and be our fucking P.
Just like I thought, they were in a tough spot, in need of some desperate help. The Nagel Dog and Carmichael were in need of something else. Looked at the ground, it was sexy as hell. I said, ooh, I like its size. He said, my club's broke down and you seem real nice. Would you like to buy? I got a club full of shit and the season's been hell. The next stop is the Stockport Travelodge Hotel.
Tweaking into a whole new era. League One, step to this, I dare ya. Fuck, it's a whole new level. The atmosphere's ace, but the football's fucking drivel. Stevenage, Burton, Northampton, Shrewsbury, League One, where football is shite and shite is football. If you know like I know, it was bound to happen this. It's the League One era, but now with an American twist. If you think we'll be straight back, then you're high like every day. But as we say, Huddersfield Town will fucking rise again.